The story begins with our protagonist being greeted by a supreme being in a strange, ethereal place. She tells him that he has been summoned to Midgard through an otherworlder's summoning spell, and she introduces herself as Lady Nolan. Then almost immediately she apologizes, explaining that he was accidentally caught in a summoning ritual meant for someone else. The protagonist confusedly points out the contradiction. She just welcomed him yet says his presence here is a mistake. Nolan elaborates, explaining that the otherworlder's summoning system randomly selects individuals from countless worlds. He was excluded from the list of potential targets, but somehow the system picked him anyway. This revelation leaves the protagonist stunned, and Nolan further clarifies that the summoning spell itself is inherently dangerous. The laws of Earth and Midgard differ so drastically that the act of summoning risks destabilizing Midgard entirely. This danger led to the spell being forbidden, yet a reckless nation still went through with it. Nolan noticed the spell's activation and intervened to minimize the damage, but she couldn't stop it entirely, and she managed to bring him to her domain for now. The protagonist asks if others summoned by the spell are in the same place. Nolan shakes her head, explaining that they were the proper targets and were sent to the Holy Sidonia Empire, where the spell originated. He realizes his summoning was purely accidental and asks her to send him back to his world, but Nolan regretfully admits that this is impossible. She explains that she was furious at the summoners for their recklessness, so she patched things up, ensuring they would never be able to use the spell again. Her explanation grows overly technical, so the protagonist gets overwhelmed and asks for a simpler version. So Nolan bluntly tells him that she's made it impossible for him to return to Earth, and even if it were possible, he no longer has a body waiting for him there. We then see that our protagonist is revealed to be nothing more than a soul in the shape of a fluffy furball, leaving him shocked at his lack of a physical body. Nolan apologizes, explaining that the summoning blowback caused this as he wasn't meant to be a target. He frustratedly tells her that an apology won't fix his predicament and demands to know what will happen to him now, so Nolan urges him to give up on his old life and start anew as a resident of Midgard. He hesitantly asks if this means he'll be sent to the Sidonia Empire like the others, and Nolan admits she could send him there. However, she warns that the Sidonia Empire is a difficult and dangerous place, and as an accidental summon, his treatment there would likely be terrible. This disheartens him, but Nolan reassures him, saying she feels responsible for his situation and intends to help him. She reveals her plan to send him to a different nation, one where he can have a better chance, and promises to give him her blessing as compensation. Confused by her words, he listens as she explains that this situation resembles the premise of video games and anime in Japan, and that shit means that being sent to a fantasy world with opportunities for adventure. She enthusiastically claims it'll be exciting for him, though he feels nothing but anxiety. Ignoring his doubts, Nolan asks him to try opening his status window, and to his surprise, it appears when he thinks about it. The window shows he is now 17 years old, and despite being a 40-year-old salaryman in his previous life, he doesn't have a job listed. So Nolan explains that in this world, the concept of a salaryman doesn't exist. Instead, there are combat jobs like swordsman, mage, knight, thief, and hunter, as well as production jobs such as herbalist, alchemist, blacksmith, and carpenter. And since fighting doesn't interest him, he expresses his desire for a production job. So Nolan obliges and grants him a skill suited for production work, along with a few other useful starter skills to aid him in his new life. She advises him that by utilizing his skills through practice and effort, he will eventually unlock a formal job title. And with that, she sends him to the continent of Asgard to begin his journey. The protagonist then gets teleported to a serene spot by a pond, where he catches a glimpse of his reflection and thinks he looks pretty hot in his new form. Checking the items Nolan gave him, he finds some food, money, and a knife. Opening his status window, he realizes it might be problematic if people find out he has Nolan's blessing. And that thinking makes him discover that he can conceal his skills, so he hides both his blessing and his item box skill. As he continues exploring his abilities, he notices he also has several magic skills. Like any typical otaku, he decides to try them out. He avoids testing fire magic, worried it might accidentally set the area ablaze. Instead, he starts with earth magic, followed by wind and water magic. Watching the spells in action, he feels a rush of excitement, thinking to himself that this truly is a fantasy world. Determined to learn more, he sets out to find a village. While walking, he stumbles upon a piece of wood and uses his appraisal skill to identify it as treant wood. This high-quality material comes from a treant monster and can be used to craft staves, magic items, and spear shafts. Thrilled with the discovery, he uses his blacksmithing skill to shape the wood into a sturdy spear. Observing the rich resources of the area like treant wood, he speculates that the plants might also be unique. And after searching further, he discovers the region is brimming with useful herbs. So he starts gathering as much as he can, but he realizes it won't all fit in his bag, so he stores the excess in his item box, which conveniently has unlimited storage. Suddenly, a girl runs toward him in a panic and hides behind him, and he sees that she's being chased by a massive, ferocious rabbit. He quickly notices how unnaturally large the rabbit is and grabs his spear to defend her. But the girl warns him that the rabbit is carnivorous, making him even more nervous. As the creature leaps at him, he manages to strike it down with his spear, and that shit kills him immediately. Takumi stands in disbelief, amazed that he was able to defeat such a dangerous beast. But this victory earns him a warrior job, even though he doesn't want it. The girl thanks him for saving her, and he asks where she's from. She explains that she's from Board Village and had wandered into the forest while gathering medicinal herbs. He asks if he can accompany her back to the village, and she happily agrees. He feels relieved and smiles, but before they leave, she asks if he isn't going to take the horned rabbit with him and mentions that the rabbit is considered quite a delicacy. He quickly stores the rabbit's corpse in his item box, explaining that while it can't hold living things, storing non-living objects like corpses isn't an issue. The girl is amazed at his item box skill and compliments him, and then introduces herself as Molly, and he responds by introducing himself as Takumi. The scene then shifts to the Holy Sidonia Empire, where the three summoned humans find themselves confused about their situation. A cloaked woman then approaches them, welcoming them to a new world. She explains that they have been summoned to use their powers as heroes to save this realm. However, her cryptic explanation only deepens their confusion. She then introduces herself as Elizabeth, the first empress of the Holy Sidonia Empire, and reveals her face. And her expression exudes the air of someone who might suck your damn soul in some dark alley. Then we see that among the three, a girl named Akane suddenly gains a unique skill called Revelation from Lady Nolan. This skill grants her divine insight, instructing her to trust her instincts as they will guide her to the right decisions. Following her instincts, Akane decides not to trust Elizabeth because everything about her appearance screams dangerous. Back in Board Village, Molly's parents warmly thank Takumi for saving their daughter. Her father introduces himself as Banga the Hunter and her mother as Martha. Takumi asks if it would be alright for him to stay in the village for a while, and they happily agree, mentioning that their village is abundant in herbs and even has a vein of ore nearby, which excites Takumi. Banga then introduces Boban, who stands nearby, as the village blacksmith. Takumi then thanks the villagers for letting him stay, but they inform him there's no inn in the village. But instead they offer to build him a home, which makes him genuinely happy. They show him a plot of land where his house will stand, and Boban gathers the villagers to help with construction. Takumi decides to pitch in as well, using his earth magic to level the ground. The villagers are impressed by his magical skill, but the effort drains a significant amount of his mana. So Banga advises him to conserve his energy and let the rest of them handle the work. Later, Takumi's new home is completed, and he uses his carpentry and blacksmithing skills to craft some basic furniture to make it livable. Feeling settled, he checks his status window and wonders if it's possible to change his warrior job. To his surprise, an option to switch jobs appears, so he excitedly selects Alchemist and Blacksmith as his main jobs and dives into work. Together with Boban, he collects ores of iron, silver, and copper. He even discovers a rare mana-infused material called Magic Iron Ore, deciding to smelt all of it into ingots. Takumi begins with the iron ore, noting that in this world the process doesn't require a furnace thanks to magic. Using a combination of his alchemy and earth magic, he successfully transforms the raw ore into ingots. But the process consumes a huge amount of mana. But he pushes himself anyway to continue, determined to create as many materials as possible. Later, Molly brings him dinner only to find that he's collapsed from overexertion. When Takumi regains consciousness, he explains that he pushed himself too hard and drained his mana completely. Martha gives him a sharp lecture for being reckless, and Banga hands him a healing potion, which restores his energy. And from that point on, Martha and Molly check on him regularly to ensure he doesn't overdo it again. Takumi diligently continues his alchemy, refining ores into ingots over several days. And along the way, he manages to extract small quantities of precious metals like gold, lead, tungsten, titanium, and tin. Using these materials, he crafts high-quality utensils and tools, and also his relentless effort causes his alchemist and blacksmith levels to soar. Afterward, we see Takumi honing his smithing skills under Boban's guidance, assisting him with fire magic during their work. And together they craft a knife, and Boban proudly declares it his finest creation yet. Takumi's blacksmith level skyrockets to 40, while his alchemist level lags behind at 33, much to his annoyance, as his real goal is to excel as an alchemist. Later, Takumi approaches Banga, asking for some potions so he can try making his own using the herbs he's gathered. Banga agrees, but only has basic potions to offer, which Takumi gladly accepts. Soon, we see Takumi brewing potions like a mad scientist or an evil witch in a fantasy story. The process reminds him of his childhood, when he would experiment endlessly. Once his potion is complete, he notices its color is different from Banga's and can feel faint mana radiating from it. He deduces this is due to his use of water prepared with water magic and becomes eager to learn more potion recipes. Not stopping there, we later see Takumi chewing on random poisonous plants on purpose, and when he gets poisoned, he heals himself with his heal spell, a painful but effective method to gain resistance to poison and paralysis while leveling up his light magic skill. He notes that this dangerous method is the quickest way to develop such resistance, though it's far from pleasant, but thanks to this reckless training, he unlocks purification magic. But just as he reflects on his progress, a massive level 25 armored boar appears before him. Armed with his spear and knife, Takumi prepares to defend himself. The boar then charges and Takumi hurls his knife at it, but the blade bounces off harmlessly. He then desperately strikes with his spear, which shatters into countless pieces. Resorting to spells, he casts Rock Ball and Wind Cutter, but neither has any effect. Frustrated and cornered, Takumi scrambles for a plan. But suddenly, he notices movement behind him, and he finds a poison spider lurking nearby. Assuming the worst, he prepares for another fight, only to realize the spider is injured. And before he can react, the boar charges again. So Takumi braces for impact, but the spider unexpectedly comes to his aid, blinding the boar and causing it to miss its attack. Though the boar is disoriented, Takumi remains at a loss on how to finish it. But in a flash of inspiration, he uses his alchemical decomposition skill, and the spell dissolves the armored boar from within, defeating it completely. As the boar falls, Takumi gains martial arts and magic combat skills, leaving him in disbelief that his crafting magic saved him. Takumi then checks on the poison spider, noticing it's on the verge of death. Grateful for its help, he thanks the spider, assuming it risked itself to save him. Using his heal spell, he restores the spider's strength and prepares to leave, thinking everything is fine now. However, a notification suddenly pops up, informing him that he can tame the spider. Surprised by the option, he hesitates, but when the spider looks at him with its shiny, hopeful 8 eyes, makes it impossible for Takumi to walk away. He asks if it wants to join him, and upon agreeing, he tames it, unlocking a telepathic connection. He then curiously asks if it already has a name, but it doesn't. Noticing the maple leaf-like pattern on its back, he names it Maple. And as soon as the spider accepts the name, it evolves into a killer spider, and even its severed leg regenerates. Later, Takumi returns to the village, proudly showing the massive armored boar he defeated. The villagers are stunned, amazed he managed to slay such a formidable beast alone. Molly, however, quickly notices the large spider perched on his back. Alarm spreads among the villagers, but Takumi reassures them, explaining that Maple is a tamed monster. Banga is floored, remarking that taming insect-type monsters is almost unheard of. Not wanting to linger on the subject, Takumi redirects their attention to the boar, suggesting they focus on preparing it for a feast. The villagers are shocked at his generosity in sharing such a valuable catch, but he shrugs it off, happy to share. Soon the entire village gathers for a celebratory feast. While they eat, Banga hands Takumi the boar's fangs and leftover hide, explaining that these items can fetch a good price in a big city. Takumi curiously asks about the nearest city, and Banga tells him it's a place called Bolton. Then we see Maple playing with the village children, endearing herself to the community. Watching the lively scene, Boban remarks that the village has become brighter and more cheerful since Takumi's arrival. Banga agrees, but reflects that Takumi doesn't seem like the type to settle in a small village forever. Meanwhile, in Midgard, Nolan observes Takumi from afar, pleased to see he's thriving. Another supreme being joins her, asking what Nolan expects from the boy. Nolan feigns ignorance, but the supreme being presses, revealing that she gave Takumi a special body, her blessing, and even sent him a full year into the past, before the Holy Sidonia Empire's summoning spell was activated. Nolan dismisses the notion that she has any deeper intentions, but her expression betrays her true thoughts, hinting that she may have a deeper plan for Takumi's future. One morning, Takumi wakes up to find himself tied up in bed, and he immediately knows Maple is behind it. She apologizes, explaining that she's been feeling lonely because Takumi has been so busy lately, and just wanted to get his attention. Realizing he's been neglecting her, Takumi admits that work has been consuming all this time, so he decides to take the day off and spend it with Maple, and this simple gesture makes her ecstatic. Just as the two are getting ready to enjoy their day, Martha walks in with Takumi's lunch and immediately notices the awkward situation. To her, it looks like something strange is going on between Takumi and Maple, but Takumi insists that it's not what she's imagining. Martha takes his explanation at face value, but can't help noticing the silky threads Maple has produced. Intrigued, she gets the idea to harvest as much silk as possible from Maple, seeing it as a golden opportunity. Later that day, Martha proudly shows off a shirt she's made from the spider silk, and the ladies in the village are going wild over its texture and quality. Takumi, surprised by their enthusiasm, learns that spider silk is considered a rare luxury item, usually only affordable to nobles. Martha, sensing a lucrative opportunity, asks Maple if she can produce more fabric. Maple obliges and eagerly squirts out more silk, but the process is time-consuming, so this means that she won't have time to play with Takumi anymore. Though Takumi is a little disappointed as he has been looking forward to spending the day with her. Still, he knows he has other responsibilities to tackle, so he's not entirely bothered. It's been about a month since Takumi first arrived in the village, and he's starting to plan his next steps. He intends to head to the city to advance his studies in alchemy, but the thought of saying goodbye to the villagers he's grown close to leaves him hesitant. In the meantime, Takumi decides to visit Boban at the forge to continue practicing blacksmithing. Together, they manage to craft a chest plate that fits Takumi perfectly, as well as a pair of sturdy steel-toe boots. Boban, proud of their work, points out that the boots are great for kicking things in a pinch. But Takumi, ever the pacifist, reminds Boban that he has no intention of fighting because he's committed to becoming an alchemist. Just then, Banga shows up, pleased to see that Takumi's armor is finally complete, though there's a hint of sadness in his voice. He knows Takumi can't stay in the village forever if he wants to grow his production business, and heading to the city is the logical next step because it's where Takumi can sell more of his goods, access a reliable supply of materials, and truly thrive. Banga then mentions that a trader from Bolton will be passing through the village in a couple of days, and he's already arranged for Takumi to hitch a ride back with him. While they're sad to see him leave, they understand this is for the best, and they encourage Takumi to start preparing for the journey. Grateful for their support, Takumi thanks them and heads back to his house to begin packing. On the way, he bumps into Martha, who's carrying a bucket of meat. He curiously asks what she's up to, and Martha explains that she's on her way to dispose of the innards from a horned rabbit Banga had caught. Apparently, the innards are the most delicious part of the rabbit, but they're also tricky to process safely. And without proper equipment to remove diseases and parasites, they have no choice but to throw the meat away. Takumi, however, has a better idea, and he bends down and uses his purification magic to cleanse the meat, making it safe to eat. Martha is grateful but also visibly stunned by what she just witnessed. She points out that light magic is incredibly rare in this world, and if people found out Takumi could use it, it would likely attract a lot of unwanted attention. So she advises him to keep this ability a secret when he leaves the village. Acknowledging her warning, Takumi promises to be cautious, but while he's still here, he plans to use every bit of his power to improve the villagers' lives. And over the next couple of days, he gets to work using earth magic to construct a sturdy brick wall to enhance the village's defenses. For convenience, he builds a water pump and even adds a few other amenities to make life easier. And by the time he's finished, the village looks completely transformed. So when the merchant from Bolton finally arrives, he's so astonished by the improvements that he barely recognizes the place. Banga then steps forward to greet Pepek the trader, and after finalizing a trade deal, Takumi walks up, ready to depart. Pepek, who's already heard a great deal about Takumi from Banga, introduces himself, and everyone confirms if Takumi has everything he needs. Takumi assures them that he hasn't forgotten a thing, but there's one last gesture he wants to make before leaving. He reaches into his bag and hands Banga a potion, and then explains that he already left about 100 similar bottles at Banga's house and urges him to use them in case of emergencies to heal any injuries. Pepek, noticing the potion, asks for a closer look and is stunned by its quality because it's undoubtedly a high-level potion. However, Takumi seems oblivious to just how valuable his creation is. Soon, the rest of the villagers gather to bid Takumi farewell, and Pepek kindly offers to wait until everyone has said their goodbyes. Molly then waves goodbye to Maple, who's cozily sleeping in Takumi's sack, and Martha hands Takumi an outfit made from Maple's silk, a collaborative gift from the village ladies. Touched by their thoughtfulness, Takumi thanks everyone for their kindness, especially considering how short a time he's been in their village. He then steps into the carriage, and the villagers give him an enthusiastic send-off, assuring him that he will always be welcome in their home. As the carriage heads toward Bolton, Pepek comments on how deeply the villagers seem to care for Takumi. Even the others in the carriage remark on the heartfelt farewell, noting that Takumi was more like family to the villagers than a guest, to the degree that the sincerity of the goodbye tugs at Heath's heartstrings. Speaking of which, the blonde man introduces himself as Heath, while the redhead is Real and the gloomy-looking man is Bogar. They explain that they're part of Lion Fang, a C-rank adventurer party currently serving as Pepek's bodyguards. However, they admit there isn't much for them to do in this peaceful region, making the assignment more of a routine journey than a dangerous mission. Real then notices Takumi clutching his bag tightly and curiously asks if something precious is inside, and Takumi casually answers that his pet killer spider Maple is sleeping in there. The group is stunned that Takumi managed to tame a killer spider, prompting Real to ask if he can see it. However, his creepy demeanor makes Maple headbutt him square in the face, and that makes Takumi immediately start apologizing for Maple's behavior, but the others assure him there's no need because Real totally deserved it. Heath even jokes that Maple might develop a fear of all humans after meeting Real, though that's clearly not the case because Maple seems to have taken a liking to Bogart. And as the group continues fawning over Maple, Papek calls Takumi to the front of the carriage to discuss the potion he saw earlier, and he asks if Takumi has any more in stock and expresses interest in buying some. Takumi is open to the idea, but before the conversation can go further, one of the horses suddenly halts, signaling trouble ahead. A horde of goblins has surrounded the carriage, preparing to attack. The group knows this is bad news, but instead of panicking, they seem excited about the chance to finally see some action. They tell Takumi and Papek to stay put while they handle the situation. With roughly 20 goblins in the field, the adventurers step out confident they can take them all. Real then fires arrows from his bow with precision, while Bogar and Heath crush goblins left and right with their mace and axe. The fight is over quickly, and the group begins dissecting the goblins to harvest their magic stones. Maple observes the chaos with interest, clearly warming up to Bogar but maintaining her disdain for Real and indifference toward Heath. After the skirmish, everyone piles back into the carriage and the journey continues for another 3 days. When they finally arrive in Bolton, the members of Lionfang head straight to the Adventurers Guild to report the success of their bodyguard mission. Takumi tags along as he needs to register with the guild if he plans to stay in the city. Ideally, he would have joined the Alchemist Guild, but since Bolton doesn't have one, becoming an adventurer is his only option. The receptionist Hans explains to Takumi that the Adventurer Guild card can serve as his identification. As long as he completes at least one simple quest per month, the card won't expire. With this knowledge, Takumi proceeds to register as an adventurer and introduces Maple as his pet, finalizing all the paperwork. With his registration done, Takumi heads to Papek's trading company to negotiate a deal for his potions. He reveals that he has about 103 potions in stock, each of exceptionally high quality. Papek is impressed and offers 10 silver coins per healing and stamina potion and 50 silver coins per mana potion. Takumi quickly calculates that this deal would net him over 7 million yen in equivalent value. Shocked by the amount, he feels it's too much money, but Papek reassures him that this is fair, adding that Takumi could earn even more if he established a solid reputation as a potion producer. Papek, aware of Takumi's plans to become a producer in the city, advises him to find a home with an attached workshop for efficiency. Takumi realizes he hadn't even thought about housing yet, so to help him out, Papek calls over his assistant Thomas and asks him to show Takumi a suitable property at an affordable price. Then when Takumi finally sees the property, it looks more like a grand mansion than a simple house. Feeling overwhelmed, he doubts he can afford such a luxurious place. Thomas, however, assures him that the mansion is surprisingly affordable and even guarantees that it's ghost-free, eliminating any unnecessary worries. Takumi then notices the spacious workshop attached to the mansion, which makes it incredibly convenient for his work. Realizing the long-term benefits and knowing he has enough funds from the potion deal, Takumi decides to go for it. And after a moment of deliberation, he tells Thomas with newfound confidence that he'll take the mansion. Thomas is delighted to hear Takumi's decision and assures him he'll begin the paperwork immediately. And he tells Takumi he can move in as early as tomorrow. As they walk through the city streets, Takumi catches a foul stench in the air. Noticing Takumi's discomfort, Thomas explains that the unpleasant odor comes from the city sewers. While the wealthy use magical purifiers to clean their sewage, the main city sewers lack this luxury due to the rarity and expense of magical purifiers, which are typically found only in ancient ruins or dungeons. And occasionally priests are hired to manually purify the sewers with magic, but most of the time they remain filthy. The next day, Takumi and Maple settle into their new house, and Takumi immediately starts brainstorming a solution to the sewer issue. He visits Papek's company to acquire some quartz and clay. Using magic, he shapes the materials and combines fire magic with space-time magic to bake them efficiently. The process is exhausting, and after depleting his mana reserves, Takumi has to drink a couple of mana potions to recover. Despite the effort, his work pays off because he successfully creates a modern toilet. Not long after, Takumi hears a loud scream from the living room. Rushing to investigate, he finds Papek completely wrapped in maple silk. Takumi gets bewildered and demands to know why Maple did this, and Maple innocently explains that she thought Papek would find it fun. To her credit, the silk is so comforting that it put Papek to sleep, but the sudden swaddling was definitely alarming. Takumi profusely apologizes for Maple's behavior, but Papek reassures him that it's fine, though being swaddled out of nowhere did give him quite a scare, so he asks to use Takumi's restroom because he needs to shake it off. Moments later, Papek emerges from the restroom with wide eyes, demanding to know what the marvel of technology inside is. Takumi casually explains that it's a toilet he invented. He fitted it with a magical purification device which automatically cleans itself after use. Essentially, once someone uses it, the device employs purification magic to break down waste into inorganic materials, which are then flushed away. Papek is amazed, marveling at the ingenuity, but he quickly realizes that creating such a device would require someone with a rare aptitude for light magic. Takumi immediately realizes he may have messed up, remembering Martha's strict warning not to use his light magic openly. Worried about the potential fallout, he pleads with Papek to keep this a secret. Papek, understanding the gravity of the situation, promises not to tell anyone. However, he's absolutely adamant about one thing: he needs those toilets, and he boldly asks if Takumi can make 100 of them. Takumi hesitates, knowing how much effort it took to craft just one. But with Papek's relentless insistence, he reluctantly agrees, but under the condition that Papek supplies the necessary raw materials. Papek gets overjoyed and accepts the deal, but points out that it's unreasonable for Takumi to handle the entire workload himself. So he suggests that Takumi should consider getting a slave. The suggestion shocks Takumi, who's firmly against slavery. Papek, however, reasons that if Takumi wants to keep his abilities under wraps, having a bound-to-secrecy slave is the safest option. Light magic is a massive deal, marking someone as chosen by God, and the Church of Divine Light wouldn't take kindly to commoners gaining access to cheap purification methods via Takumi's toilets. The church, which profits heavily from monopolizing purification magic, would likely try to force Takumi into their fold. But Papek reassures him that he already has a plan to deal with the church, so Takumi doesn't need to worry about them for now. Papek then emphasizes that keeping the church in the dark about his light magic is paramount, which is why hiring a slave might be the safest option. But Takumi remains firmly opposed to slavery, vowing to handle the work alone if necessary. But before they can argue further, Takumi's guild card suddenly begins glowing. He curiously checks it and finds a notification requiring him to complete a verification quest to maintain his adventurer status. Realizing he won't have time to handle the toilet production alone, he reluctantly agrees to Papek's suggestion. Papek then takes Takumi to the Mulan Trading Company, assuring him they are the most ethical slave traders available. Then, while Papek goes to negotiate a good deal with the owner, Takumi steps out into the garden, drawn by its beauty. There he notices a stunning elf girl sitting alone on a terrace, and before he can say anything, she spots him and sharply orders him to leave. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to not miss the next part.